Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Center for Leadership, the podcast where leadership begins at the center, you. I am Carrie Tark, and I believe that in order to lead others effectively, we must first learn to lead ourselves. This segment is called Beyond the Title, where we have conversations to explore the raw, unscripted, behind the scenes stories of people discovering how to turn their passion into purpose. They'll show practices, insights, and tools that will help us stay centered, resilient, and ready to empower those in our care. Leadership isn't just a role, it's a choice, and it starts for showing up for yourself. So let's dive in. So I am excited today to be with Michelle and learning a little bit more about you. We met at an online networking event. We're in a breakout room together, and I don't know about you, but there was just this instant energy connection through Zoom that just doesn't happen very often. So Michelle and I have had an opportunity to talk on a outside of this podcast, and I'm excited to share your story and have you share with us kind of what you do. But first, I want to know what lights your fire, Michelle.
Oh my gosh. Well, first, Carrie, you're absolutely right. You and I'm sure, have both been on an equal number of Zoom breakouts over the past 5 years, much less
Yes.
more than that. And it's very interesting how you can read energy even without being in the room with someone.
Yeah.
But the minute we got into that breakout, I don't know, you were up in the right-hand corner of my screen. I'm like, oh, that woman's interesting. She's got energy. She's got presence. But it wasn't like professional presence, it was spirit presence. It was energetic,
Yes.
it was
Yes.
soul. It was professionally presented, but you were just so there. So you're right. It was immediate on my end too. So I've been having so much fun getting to know you.
Yes.
And all right, so to answer your question, there's so many different ways to approach that from an emotional place. Like music lights me up. I'm a dancer, so you put on a good beat. I'm a Latin dancer. My feet don't touch the ground, and my spirit rises with them. So that is one thing that lights me up. Another thing that lights me up is helping people stop struggling, stop suffering. And, if you ever hear somebody say that, obviously there's a backstory. But
Yep.
I really love seeing that moment when someone releases that spiritual, and they settle down into who they are on a deeper level. And I don't mean that in terms of spirituality so much as I mean in terms of just being comfortable in the present moment with their identity.
Hmm.
Because I think so often we have experiences that make us feel at odds with who we are or others or the world. And then we get stuck there. And so it just makes my heart sing when I see somebody finally shift that and step into an identity that just feels strong and good and like it fits. I'm
Yes.
sure you've seen those moments in the work that you do too.
I do. I do. And the first thing when you said music, like mu ev my life revolves around music.
Oh, well, now you have to tell me what kind.
Everything, all kinds. Like I have a playlist for every situation that I could possibly, be in to help me either lament or help me get out, to help me function, to help me, when I'm at home, I have a routine of kind of waking up slowly and doing a meditation and doing some reading and some journaling and just kind of easing into my day. When I travel, I don't necessarily always have that time because I don't like to get up early in the morning. I'm not an early person, but
Mhm.
there's playlists that I will have then that will kind of help me transition into my day in such a way of creating and bringing that energy of how I want to show up. And so yeah, I love. Uh, I'm a fantastic dancer when nobody's watching, but and so there's a lot of dancing that goes along with it too. But yeah, we're gonna definitely have to explore that. But tell me a little bit more about how that passion and that fire has transitioned you to where you are today in the work that you do.
Well, it's funny because those two fires go together.
Mm.
And because really we're talking about state change, right?
Mm.
That's what you're talking about, like
Yes.
waking up in the morning. I do that too. I have a station on Pandora that I put on the minute I wake up because I want to set my state for the day, and I get up at 5. So like if I can dance my way out of the house because the first thing I do is go to the beach for the sunrise with the dogs. If I can dance my way out of the house and then hit the beach, by the time I get home, I'm so grounded in my true self and my identity that the rest of the day just kind of unfurls from there.
Yeah.
And then the other thing of watching people transform themselves into an identity that feels good, those two things really go together because they all go back to, we all have trauma. I'm a trauma recovery specialist. And the passions that I think we develop come from two areas. One, who we're just born to be. Like I've been a writer since you put a pen in my hand. So I wrote my first short story when I was 7. And and my trauma wasn't until I was 13. So even after that big life change for me, that passion for writing and self-expression was always there. But then I
Mm.
think things happen to us because whether it's big T or little t trauma, we all experience things that change who we are. And then our passions meld and merge. And then you become a different person, but you pull through those old passions and put them together with new ones, right? So my first memoir was all about dancing my way through PTSD recovery. So I took my old passion for writing and put it with my dance passion and my transformation passion. And you start to like take your passions and they all, like if you're mindful, you can put them all together, can't you?
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think the thread that I see through that, and like you said, we all have some sort of trauma, something that shapes us as we go through our life, and we're not in control of those things that have happened to us. But I love how that common thread is taking control of the passions that you have and weaving them into, I've been changed through this trauma and now I'm not going to lose those passions in it. Tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about how have you used those passions to move you through trauma? They've shaped you in a different way, but it sounds like, oh yeah, that's fantastic. It's not that great in the moment, right?
Right. So I'll tell you, like, um, you're right. It sounds great in this moment, like, oh, she's free. She's been free for
Yeah.
almost 20 years. And like, that's amazing. But, so my trauma was very, very horrific. And I was 13 and I had no coping skills. If you think of yourself as a seventh grader, it's like, what
Yeah.
do you do with this big event? And I knew afterward that I was completely different, but I wanted to be courageous and I wanted everyone to just pretend nothing had happened and I wanted to go forward. And, if you've ever tried that, spoiler alert, it doesn't work. and so I became a very troubled teenager and then a very troubled young adult. Nobody was diagnosing PTSD at that time, but it took 24 years for me to actually get the diagnosis that helped me figure out, oh, there's something I can do. I'm not crazy. I have a really normal response to a very abnormal experience. But the whole time I leaned into my passions. When I would be so depressed, I would literally lock myself in my dorm room at college and put on music and dance for 2 hours until I just danced to exhaustion so that
Mhm.
I could move. I didn't understand what I was doing, but
Yeah.
now we have the science, like when you move your body, you're moving. Emotions are just energy, right? Energy and
Yeah.
motion, that's all it
Yeah.
is. But when you feel bad, that's stuck energy. So movement can really help break it up and get it to move. And it was just an intuitive, I don't know what else to do. So I may as well dance kind of moment.
Right. Right.
And so I pulled that through and I was always writing, always. I actually, there's a closet in my office here, and I have all of my old journals there. So there are like almost 30 of them, just writing and writing and writing my way through the pain and then turning that writing into, I published poems. I am a published and produced playwright. I just took all of it and put it into art. I just
Mm.
did what I knew to do personally, and then put it out in the world to like share it with others, because I really feel like we're all in a chain. Like somebody's farther ahead than I am, and I'm farther ahead than somebody else. So I was always all along using dance and using writing, but not in any structured way until enough time had gone by and things had gotten so bad that I was really concerned I was going to do something very harmful to myself. And I thought, okay, like I have to get a handle on this, and
Yeah.
I need to do it in a really structured way. And so you're a reader. Did you read The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion?
I have not.
So in 2005, that book came out, and I read it. And she wrote her way through grief. Her husband died, and she wrote a memoir about the whole year of magical thinking, like of thinking he was going to walk into the room in any moment, like she wouldn't give up his shoes because he may need them. And she has this beautiful line about writing through the pain, and that when things seem chaotic, she always turns to the research. Turn to
Mm.
the research, turn to the research. Then she researches everything and then turns it into writing. And I thought, oh, that's structure. So I went and parked myself in the library here. I live in a little beach town, and I parked myself in the library, and I thought, I'm going to do what Joan did. I'm going to turn to the research. I'm going to research exactly what happened to me. I'm going to research trauma. I'm going to research psychology of trauma. And I read everything there was. And then I sat down and I did what she did. I wrote my way through it. And it became such a, I mean, it was not easy. I'm laughing, but like half of my hair fell out. That's
Yeah.
like how stressful it was to write through it. But the outcome was that I really structured for myself my past in a way that I became bigger than it was.
Mm.
That was a huge benefit. And while I was doing that, I decided I needed to dance in a more structured way, because I had left Manhattan, and it's not like I could go, clubbing every night of the week. So I signed up for a dance class. All we have here are dance studios. So I signed up for a dance class every night of the week at a different studio. Cha-cha, salsa, Argentine tango, East Coast swing, West Coast swing. There was a different dance class every
That's
night.
amazing.
Went. So I put those two things together. I kept writing, I kept dancing, I kept writing, I kept dancing. And I got, the right kind of professional help, which was not conventional. It was alternative. And that really, really freed me. And, if you follow what lights you up,
Mm.
magical things happen. And I think that's kind of your point, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think on my journey, um, just in through life, like I've grown up in a small rural part of Iowa. I mean, my high school graduating class had 69 kids in it. So we knew each other, right?
Yeah.
I knew whose people's grandparents were, right? I knew the siblings, 300 kids, I think, in our whole school, or 180 in our high school. Like we knew everybody in the high school. So it's a very small rural area, but I I can't even tell you how many funerals that I have been to of peers. Like starting very young. I think the graduating class below me had lost like 5 or 7 like classmates before they hit their 5-year class reunion. And so I had been to funeral after funeral after funeral in our high school, in our gym, right? And these weren't these some were sicknesses, some were accidents, some were drunk driving, some were murders. Like
In
the
your tiny little
in
town.
our tiny little town. And I thought it was normal, right? Like well, okay, so everybody goes through this, right? Like who and it wasn't until like I got older and my kids were going through school and I was working with high school youth, and they had a classmate who had passed away in an accident, and it hit me at that moment, like these were kids that were juniors, seniors in high school, and they had never gone through this before. And I'm like, wow, by the time that I was a junior or senior in high school, that I had done this so many times. And it just kind of in the last couple of years has just reflected back on I've been curious about what that has done because I've never really paid much attention, but it shook me, right? It was a big deal. We
It
went through
would.
it together as a community, and back then too, our we didn't talk about it with our parents. I never sat down and our parents sat down and had a conversation with us about how we were doing or how we were moving through it. And it was kind of like you, like I'm fine. I'm gonna go to work. I'm gonna, do whatever. I'm stronger than this. But it now as I look back and I just think about I even seeing other people that I went through this with, I think it's obvious in some of the ways that this was it was a hard thing for our whole community. And whether you were really close to those two individuals who passed away or you were just in the vicinity of, it's a small enough community that it was not left without an impact on anyone.
Mhm.
And just figuring out how we all had to figure out our own resilience. We all had to figure out how to navigate through the work that we do. And I think as I've been really working on myself in the last couple of years, that has definitely bubbled up for me, where it was like, wow, that was a huge turning point in my life that I didn't even recognize until right now.
Well, and I think it's hard because if you're a child at that time, you don't have context.
Right.
It's really up to the adults. I think of my mom. My mom's boyfriend died of cancer in like 1950, whatever. She was 16 and he was, I think, 1 year older. And nobody said a word to her.
No.
Not even her own parents sat down and said, "How are you doing?" Like, let's process this. So I think you're making a really, really important point. And it's interesting because as a trauma recovery specialist, I get uh, invitations to consult in places that I didn't expect they would come from. And earlier this year, there's a local company that one of the principals left
Mm.
and he did not tell his team that he was leaving. So on a Friday, they had a meeting. They were all like presenting a big pitch on Monday, and he didn't say he wasn't going to be there. And over the weekend, like he just packed up his office without anyone knowing, and come Monday morning, he was gone
Wow.
and left his team high and dry. And the trauma that this created in the team, it was like 10 people, they had a complete and utter meltdown. And I was hired to come in and help them process how to work together and work through this climactic, unanticipated event. And I
Yeah.
think that's really what's missing so often is that nobody teaches us how do I respond in this kind of situation where I feel traumatized? Because really nobody teaches us about trauma at all.
At
You
all.
know?
At all. And I
So
think
what
for
did you
me,
all do? What have you been doing to process? What have you learned?
I think I'm still in the process of discovery and learning. I think I am aware. I've had several conversations with other people about it. And I think sitting in the grief, I think the biggest thing for me is acknowledging that it happened and that it hurt. Because I
Mm,
think even in that moment or even as I was going through some of those things, it's like I felt guilty feeling bad about it. Like I'm not a family member. Like they're hurting so much worse than I am. Or at least, somebody else had this, I shouldn't, this isn't really trauma. I mean, I'm not somebody over here that's dealing, doing that comparison of like
yeah,
my trauma
yeah,
is not valuable enough to worthy of a conversation and I think acknowledging one that it was trauma and that it happened
mhm,
and that I think what it's taught me mostly through this journey, because I then just recently went through burnout and just recovery of that, is that those emotions and those things that are happening are real. And taking the time to sit in it and to acknowledge that they're real and to own it and to be okay. And then also knowing that, like you said, that those emotions are energy and that I can now move that energy and let those things go to let in new things. So,
beautifully put, nicely articulated. I think with some of the things that you brought up are so interesting. And I used to have a podcast. This is like a decade ago, and I interviewed survivors, obviously, all the time. And also, I interviewed every show, I interviewed a survivor and I interviewed a clinician, like some professional in the trauma field. And there's a great rehab and recovery center in like 2 hours north of me called The Refuge. And Judy Crane was the founder. And she came on to my podcast and she gave me this beautiful definition of trauma that changed everything about how I looked at it, understood it, and spoke about it. And so I'm going to share it with you
Yeah.
because it was such a beautiful way to position inclusion rather than exclusion when we think of trauma. She
Mhm.
said to me, the baseline definition of trauma is any experience that feels less than good.
No.
That's the baseline.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, like the moment you're born, we're all trauma survivors.
Right.
Like
Right.
the
Exactly.
playing field is
That's
completely
how we
level.
enter the world.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I love that she said that because what she was really talking about is if it feels bad to you, it is traumatic. It doesn't matter if it
Doesn't
doesn't feel
matter.
bad to me. It could,
Right.
you know, I worked with a couple who had been in a car wreck and they had survived. They were totally fine. But he would not get into a car and she was driving all over the place and they were having a lot of trouble in their marriage because how are we supposed to live like this? He won't get in the car. And they'd been in the same moment together, but they had two totally different experiences of that moment.
Yes.
And a lot of that has to do with your basic personality and your DNA, and also the way that stress was modeled for you as a child and people around you, the adults around you, were they able to manage when something unexpected happened or were they not? So you grow into your trauma response, so to speak. And when we all sit with the idea, like, if it feels bad to me, it's trauma. Now, it might be little t trauma. I'm not saying it's big T all the time,
Right.
but that's all you need to know,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I think it takes kind of the stigma away from it because I think there is this idea of, oh, if you've been through something traumatic that, you don't know how to cope or you don't know how to, you're going to be a danger, you're going to be impulsive or, all of these things that go around that. But like you said, we all enter the world in a traumatic experience and that every day of our life there's something that's happening that doesn't always feel good to us.
Yes. Yes. And really, what we're saying is you have to respect your response.
Mm,
That's really what, and it doesn't matter if other people don't. I've worked with a lot of sexual assault survivors, and one particularly stands out because she'd been um, in a very in an experience that felt really not good. And she sat in my office saying to me, I don't think it's trauma and I don't think it's PTSD because I'm not a veteran. I wasn't on the front lines of Iraq. And I said, I understand that because that is a really horrific experience. That does not have anything to do with your experience.
yes.
So I
I
think,
love I love that. Respect your response. And I
yeah.
think that for me has been a big learning and
Mm,
part of this, right? In order to, part of this whole podcast and the work that I do in order to show up for others, we need to know how to be able to lead ourselves. And being able to show myself and to say,
mm.
respect myself for my own response and allows me when I'm able to do that and acknowledge it and it's easier for me to do that for somebody else.
Well,
Right.
I'm wondering, right? Because that I knew you were going to go that way, and I'm thinking to myself, what makes it so hard to do that for ourselves in your perspective? What do you think makes it so hard?
I think part of it goes back to what you were talking about earlier. I think it's ingrained in what we were modeled and shown in the past.
Mm,
I think for me, um, I would, my parents, they weren't. I'm not going to say they weren't loving because they were absolutely loving parents and they provided for us. But they're boomers, right? Like their job
right,
was to provide for us. Like
right.
that's what they're supposed to do. I'm a Gen X kid. You
I
have
am too.
yeah, you know when to be home. But just go do your own thing. And I think also part of that being independent as a Gen Xer,
Mm,
and being responsible for you know everything in our lives, part of went along with that was your resiliency, was dealing with situations. There were so many situations that happened in my life with fights or different things going on that my parents never knew about because we just dealt with it, right?
Right,
I
right.
meet you at the park at 3 o'clock and we're gonna fight this out. Like that's just how it was. So that was just kind of ingrained in how we grew up is that you create the problem, you deal with the problem. And there isn't a necessary part, you don't have to share it with somebody. Again.
You know,
So I
I
think that's been hard for me to share that.
It's interesting because the flip side of it is that is so self-sufficient, right? It's so
Mhm.
self-reliant.
Yeah.
And when you think about identity, I'm a big student of identity. And when you think about identity and how you get to choose who you want to be, that is a beautiful way to be. So it's then you're really talking about like splitting the hair between
Yes.
being
Yes.
completely self-reliant and being able to connect with other people in a meaningful way so they can know you, right? Because if
Yes.
we don't share anything, then nobody really knows us. It gets
Yes.
so interesting in the tiny fine nuances.
It is. There is this idea, the self-reliance works so well. I feel like for me, until I'm drowning.
Well, there is that. There is that.
And
As a
then
former overachiever who drowned herself, I get it.
and then it's like then I'm not even practiced in what even to do. And then I'm like, it's just gonna be so much more work to even share this with somebody, right? And it just keeps digging, digging,
I
digging.
know,
So,
but that's one of the things I admire so much about your journey is that you did get to that place and you're like, you know what? I need help.
yep,
I need somebody else to like show me the structure here and
yep,
help me figure myself out.
yes,
And your process for that has been so beautiful and so incredibly creative and mindfully aware. Not many people, I hope you write a book one day about it because I
yeah,
think that the process, as you've described it to me, is
yes,
such a gorgeous bridge from one state to the other of really stepping into an identity that you create and chose versus the
yes,
one that just kind of happened by default when you weren't looking.
yes. And I think I've always been so authority, resistant. I was raised that way. That's who I am. And in my job, right, I think that's why I'm drawn to facilitation is that people hire me to come in to bring a process to ask questions they can figure out and solve their own problems, right? I'm not telling anybody to do anything. I'm not pushing anything on anybody. So I think when I knew I needed help, I was looking for somebody who was going to do that for me,
Mm.
and looking for coaching that was going to ask me those tough questions and have me think about things that I hadn't thought about before. Like, how am I really going to solve my own problem? How am I going to do this? I just needed somebody from the outside to say, okay, this is the questions that you're not asking yourself.
So valuable, so valuable. I wish everyone on the planet could have a coach, not a
Yes,
therapist, a coach.
coach.
You know, I know all due respect to the therapists out there, I think there's a time and a place for therapy. But I really think that the long-term value is in the coaching because it's all about those action-oriented, open-ended questions that lead you forward rather than lead you to look behind. And that to me is the big difference between therapy and coaching.
Oh, I agree. And I think coaching works so great as wraparound service because I think one, coaching works so great to work yourself out of something that you're having a hard time with, solving your own problem and moving into, really the desired state that you want, but it's also preventative, right? Like it also helps you think about, and so that you're not getting stuck in that burnout, you're not getting stuck into something that you're now having to do the work to get out of.
Absolutely. I just finished reading Dan Heath's book Upstream. It,
Oh yeah, you told me. I just
yeah,
got
no,
it, just started it.
I can't wait to hear what you think of it because it's so applicable to this. Because
Yes.
what you're talking about, coaching is very upstream and therapy is very downstream. Again, all
Yes.
due respect to therapy, but it's reactive. It's not proactive. Nobody goes into therapy to like make sure they create a good life. Well,
Right.
maybe that's not
Maybe.
true. Maybe
Maybe we're
people
using it
do.
wrong.
Maybe people do. But I hear people more hire coaches to create the
Yes.
future
Yes.
and therapists to resolve the past is the
Yes.
delineation. Generalizing, generalizing. But upstream it's such an interesting concept because what you're talking about are those questions that are preventative, that make you go upstream to prevent the problem that you don't want to have to resolve downstream later. And
Yes.
so I'm excited for you to read that book. I think you'll like it, and then we can talk about it.
Well, I know. I'm flipping between that and Nightingale right now. So, depending on what kind of reading that I need.
Yeah, yeah, what you're in the mood for. That's all right. Well, I'm going to pick up that other Kristen Hanna book, and then we can both
Yes.
flip between the Heath brothers and
Yes.
historical fiction. Just another one of our many similarities.
And it's so funny too, because that was one of the things off topic here. Like I've realized that before too, that I was always in the mindset with a book that if I picked up a book, that was the only book I could read until I was done. And so I wasn't reading very much because I was just, it was always that book. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm
Oh,
watching four different Netflix series right
I love
now.
it.
And it's like, why can't I read a book like that? Why can't I be in the mood and read this book and then read this book? I could do that. And it's just been this light bulb moment for me. So I love that. I got a different thing
I,
going on everywhere.
yeah, and I think really what you're pointing out is that we have our big light me up passions, and then we have our little moments of, well, wouldn't this be fun? And to
Yes.
me, that's also a passion. Like I have this, like one of my life core philosophies is follow the good feeling.
Mm,
And when I ignore it and I do what I think I should do, I end up miserable. I might achieve what I set out to achieve, but I'll be miserable in the achieving of it. And so several years ago, I was like, what if I just stop that and I just follow the good feeling? Because we all
yes.
have them and they're sometimes so soft or so easy to push aside that you don't honor them.
Yeah.
And so to your point, because I was always like, I don't have time to read fiction. I've
Yeah.
got things to learn. I've got things to do. I need educational, informational content at all times. And then I realized, much the way you did, like, I could read fiction.
Yeah.
It would be okay to take a break from constantly learning stuff.
Yes.
And so, what you're really pointing up is how often it would be useful to check in with those little passion hits of, I want to have a good time. I want to have fun.
Yes. Yes.
And we don't always think of that in terms of a passion, but if you don't mind, I think maybe it's passion with a little p. Like I have a
Yes.
passion for giving myself a break or for doing something fresh or doing something new or letting myself be different than I usually am.
Yes.
And those little moments are so easy to ignore, but I think we're happier when we stop
It
and
it
pay
is.
attention to them.
When I sat down to really identify what my core personal values were and how I wanted to build my business, um, there was one that absolutely had to be in there, and it was fun, like
Yep.
joy, fun. Like none of this is worth it if I'm not having fun doing it, right? Like there's going to be really tough times where I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna have to really learn and everything's gonna be about learning or about growing or about doing whatever I need to do in my business or in my life, but there has to be room for fun. And when you take time for the little things and bring a little joy into your life, and it makes those hard things not so hard. It just makes them feel a little bit more worth it. So I know that was one of the things that, you know, I think I've always known that fun has to be embedded in something that I do. I've worked a lot with youth and, youth meetings and trainings and all those things. It was like, okay, well, we're going to do a little bit of content, but we're going to have a lot of fun. Like it just is, we got to have fun. And it's not like needing to be entertained, but it's connecting that joy into seeing the, so love that.
And doing things in a way that are fun.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
they're not, it's an indication. Like, I mean, you and I spoke, you know, and I'll share, I'm in the middle of a pivot, right? Because I think when you get to a point when you realize that your focus is not your fun and your fun is coming from somewhere else, that's a really big indicator that you need to take the moment to kind of decide, oh, I'm changing. And
Yes.
I didn't realize I was changing. I didn't realize
Yes.
that I've sort of shifted over here when I thought I was over here. And the fun factor shows you that like so
Yes.
immediately.
And how amazing it that we can do that to be able to say like I'm changing and I'm shifting and that's okay rather than being like,
It's
oh
so
no, this
you're
is what
so
I'm set out
right.
to do.
You're so right because I have a friend who's miserable in her job, and I said to her, "Well, let's put our heads together. Let's get you a different job." And she was like, "Oh no, no, I'm 55. I can't start over." And I'm like, "That's exactly what I'm doing, and I'm the
Yes.
same age." So
Yes.
like,
Yes. Well, and why I think people die like the day after they retire because they've spent the last 10 or 15 years not enjoying or having fun. They're just, I got to stick with it. I got to stay the course, right?
absolutely. Well, from a leadership perspective, if people are not dialed into their fun or they're not used to letting themselves explore it or let it lead them forward, what do you recommend for them to do? Like, how do you suggest people get in touch with their fun factor if that's not something that they have been allowed to do up until now?
Oh, wow. I get a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I really try to work with organizations that that are disrupting our thinking patterns. So if I'm working with a group, really the facilitation that I use is interactive in a way that isn't crazy games, which we sometimes can use, but I don't start with one of those because that sometimes people are like, oh yeah, this is dumb, right?
Yeah, they
But
haven't shed a layer yet.
what are you doing to me, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's something that you work towards as you're building trust. But I think one of the things that we really focus on that our teaching does is breaks those patterns of thinking. We just do what we know to do, and we haven't thought and we haven't even taken the time to think about something from a different lens or taking the time to break that pattern and hear from somebody else's perspective. So really taking that time to disrupt our thinking. And when we get in the routine of disrupting that thinking, we start to be creative. We start to be a little bit more innovative. We start to see the fun and things that we can do that it's not so straight lined and it just my brain is so efficient that, I do all of these things without thinking and
Mhm.
it's not necessarily fun. It's just what my brain does. And our brains are so amazing at doing that. But when we can disrupt that and look at it, yeah, create some new pathways.
That's a great idea. I love disruptive thinking and
Yeah,
behaving. It's very freeing.
it is. It is. It is. It's like once you, like I said, for me too, like I realize one, I teach it. So I'm teaching it all the time. Um, but I've started to pause and ask myself like questions like why are you doing that and I think we've taught like I've been reading the Four Agreements. I've read it
Mhm.
like two or three times, so I've been reading it again, and in there too, even reactions or things that I have, I kind of stop myself and say, well, why do I do that? Like
Mm.
what's my what point in my life did I decide that that was always, even if it's something simple, like even if it's something that makes sense, just starting to ask myself, like, what is that really necessary? And I think as we can get used to saying that and slowing down some of those patterns, I think then it's just like, no, like, why can't I have ice cream at 10 o'clock in the morning? Like, right? I saw somebody say, like, do you know that you can walk into Walmart and you can buy a birthday cake even if it's not your birthday? Like, right? Like why can't I go swimming at noon and just take some time to go swimming and break up my day that way? Or, why can't I go work out in the middle of the day? So just small little things like that of just asking myself and being like, okay, no, it's okay that I go do that. It's okay that I go do that.
I love that. Questioning the assumptions that have
Yeah.
been putting boundaries on you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I know for me, like I said, I'm not a morning person. Of course, if I lived walking distance to a beach and not a cornfield, that might be different. But I don't get up early to go for a walk in the cornfield, although it's beautiful here in Iowa. Um, I'm not a morning person, but I love that break in the middle of the day. And I just know that when I can do that, when I can schedule my day to do that, I am going to have more fun. I am going to be more creative. I'm going to be more productive in the morning and in the afternoon. So
Hmm.
I think it's again getting out of those assumptions that I have a job from 8 to 5 and I have to be here and I have to do this work and I'm not going to be able to have any fun because I don't have time for that. Hmm, I'm going to challenge that assumption and say, why? Why do you say that you have to do that? Why do you have to say that you can't take a longer lunch break or do something different and not still get your work done? Right. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think when we don't take the time to do the fun thing, we deplete ourselves, our intellectual ability to process, our energetic ability to bring the energy that we need to be creative and to do what we want to do. And it's so funny, right? Because you can keep pushing through and succeed at 50% of your real capacity, or you could take a break and go for a swim and come back at 100% of your capacity and
exactly.
really bang it out. It's so
Exactly.
ridiculous how we'll talk ourselves into not having fun.
Yes.
There's like something really wrong with that.
I know. I know that, people who know me really well, including my husband, it's kind of like if you ever want Carrie to do something, tell her that she can't, right? Because if you tell me like, you can't do that. Oh, what? No, I'm gonna go do
Well,
it.
there's your authority figure
It
issue
it
coming
is.
right up.
It is. Watch me.
That's awesome. Well,
So
I'm going to tell you, you cannot come to visit me at the beach.
I'll be there getting a flight.
I mean, I think it'd be a great place for you to like get out of that, what did you call it? Corn sweat?
The
We don't
corn
have
sweat.
that here.
Oh, yeah, the corn sweat is real. Like you walk outside right now, you can smell the corn growing. They say you can hear it if you get up close enough, but
I
it's
bet you
so
can.
much moisture. Yeah. Yeah. Corn
Wow.
sweat. It's a big
Oh,
deal.
that sounds awful.
But we are at time. This is such a great conversation. Thank you for
So
taking the
fun.
time, and I look forward to many more. But before we close out, any closing words that you want to send to our listeners?
Oh, I just think, so often people say to me that I don't have a passion. I don't know what lights me up. And I always think, go back to, and this is cliche and you've heard it a million times, but it happens to be true. Go back to what lit you up as a kid,
Yes.
because that was your purest, most creative self before teachers trained that out of you, before parents told you it was wrong, before other influences told you to stop that. There was something, whether it was like playing with ants or, my niece and nephew love to chase lizards. And that since they were tiny, tiny, tiny little beings,
Yeah.
that's been their big thing. And now they're 8 and 11, and they still love being in nature. So, like, find that thing that you loved and do it now. Like, figure out a way to
Yes.
do it now. If it's like being in nature, it doesn't have to be that you run around chasing a lizard. It can be that you like go on a hike, go stick your feet in the ocean, go into the forest, like whatever it is. And I used to tell all of my clients 30 seconds. It takes, well, it takes 17 seconds to create a new neural pathway.
Mm.
And the taking in the good,
Yep.
that whole process. And so I used to tell all my clients, you have got to find a way for 30 seconds, because I'm an overachiever. So if it takes 17 seconds, let's do 30. And
Yep.
let's start creating a new neural pathway that you light up over and over and over by just doing 30 seconds of something that feels really fun. And it doesn't have to feel fun like at a 10. It might just feel fun at like a 0.5 to begin with. But if you
Yes.
keep doing it and your body gets used to it and your mind starts to look forward to it, next thing you know, it'll be at a 3. And then you'll start to find new ways to do it and you'll be at a 6.5 until you get all the way up. Like, it's a process. And
Oh,
so that's what I would say. Go back to the thing that felt good and find the way to do it today.
yes. Yes. Love that. Oh, thank you for sharing. Thank you all for listening. I'm going to put Michelle's information in the description and stay tuned for next episode.